The word judgment has been used a lot around you, Secretary Clinton, over the last year and a half, and in particular concerning your use of your personal email and server to communicate while you were Secretary of State. You've said it's a mistake. You said you made not the best choice. You were communicating on highly sensitive topics. Why wasn't it more than a mistake? Why wasn't it disqualifying if you want to be Commander-in-Chief?
Well, Matt, first of all, as I have said repeatedly, it was a mistake to have a personal account. I would certainly not do it again. I make no excuses for it. It was something that should not have been done. But the real question is the handling of classified material, which is, I think, what the implication of your question was. And for all the viewers watching you tonight, I have a lot of experience dealing with classified material, starting when I was on the Senate Armed Services Committee, going into the 4 years as Secretary of State. Classified material has a header which says top secret, secret, confidential. Nothing, and I will repeat this, and this is verified in the report by the Department of Justice. None of the emails sent or received by me had such a header.
I opted for convenience to use my personal email account because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two.
The State Department Inspector General says Clinton violated security guidelines when she used a private email server as Secretary of State. Clinton has said she did it for convenience.
What I did was allowed by the State Department, but
Clinton has never said who authorized her use of a private email server, and today we learned why. The internal audit found no evidence that the secretary requested or obtained guidance or approval. The report said diplomatic security officials did not and would not have signed off because the arrangement violated policies implemented in 2005.
There were no security breaches.
Clinton has long insisted her home server was secure. But the report cites emails from her private technology advisor warning in January 2011 that he had to shut down the server because he believed someone was trying to hack us. And while they did not get in, I didn't want them to have the chance to. Later that day, he sent a second message. We were attacked again, so I shut the server down for a few minutes. State Department IT staffers who expressed concerns about Clinton's setup were rebuffed. One was told by higher-ups the matter was not to be discussed any further. Another was instructed never to speak of the secretary's email system again.
The Inspector General's office of the State Department issued a report that concluded Hillary Clinton violated the Federal Records Act by not turning over all official emails before she left office. The report also found that there was no evidence she had requested or received approval to use her personal account for official business. Clinton all along has maintained the use of her server was allowed.
my personal email use was fully above board. It was allowed by the State Department, as they have confirmed. What I did was allowed by the State Department.
You said it was allowed, too.
Yes, it was.
Two State Department officials raised concerns about Clinton's exclusive use of a private email server. A senior official in Clinton's office told them the matter was not to be discussed any further. He instructed them to, quote, never to speak of the Secretary's personal email system again.
As a naval flight officer, I held a top secret sensitive compartmentalized information clearance, and that provided me access to materials and information highly sensitive to our warfighting capabilities. Had I communicated this information not following prescribed protocols, I would have been prosecuted and imprisoned. Secretary Clinton, how can you expect those such as myself, who were and are entrusted with America's most sensitive information, to have any confidence in your leadership as president when you clearly corrupted our national security?
Well, I appreciate your concern and also your experience, but let me try to make the distinctions that I think are important for me to answer your question. First, as I said to Matt, you know and I know, classified material is designated, it is marked. There is a header so that there is no dispute at all that what is being communicated to or from someone who has that access is marked classified. And what we have here is the use of an unclassified system by hundreds of people in our government to send information that was not marked. There were no headers. There was no statement, top secret, secret, or confidential. I communicated about classified material on a wholly separate system. I took it very seriously. When I traveled, I went into one of those little tents that I'm sure you've seen around the world because we didn't want there to be any potential for someone to have embedded a camera to try to see whatever it is that I was seeing that was designated, marked, and headed as classified.
Let us
So
move.
I did exactly what I should have done, and I take it very seriously. Always have, always will.
Secretary Clinton, let's talk about your vote in favor of the war in Iraq. You since said it was a mistake. Obviously, it was not something you said you would do again. I asked before for people to raise their hand if you served in Iraq. Can you do it again? How do you think these people feel when the person running to be their commander-in-chief says her vote to go to war in Iraq was a mistake?
Look, I think that the decision to go to war in Iraq was a mistake. And I have said that my voting to give President Bush that authority was, from my perspective, my mistake. I also believe that it is imperative that we learn from the mistakes, like after-action reports are supposed to do. And so we must learn what led us down that path so that it never happens again. I think I'm in the best possible position to be able to understand that and prevent it.
I never would have given President Bush the authority. I warned at the time it was not authority for a preemptive war. I believe we should withdraw starting within 60 days of my becoming president.
So it is with conviction that I support this resolution as being in the best interests of our nation. A vote for it is not a vote to rush to war. It is a vote that puts awesome responsibility in the hands of our president. And it is a vote that says clearly to Saddam Hussein, this is your last chance. Disarm or be disarmed.
There was a mistake. Now, my opponent was for the war in Iraq. He says he wasn't. You can go back and look at the record.
The war is a total disaster. It's a catastrophe, nothing less. It is such a shame that this took place. And look, the war is a total catastrophe.
Who do you blame?
And they have a civil war going on.
Who do you blame?
Well, there's only one person you can blame, and that's our current president.
I'm asking to be judged on the totality of my record. What I've done for our veterans.
Support our troops doesn't just mean when they're somewhere else. Support our troops mean when they're back here.
Stunning new allegations of cover-ups and fatal delays that should have us taking a hard look at how we're treating our veterans.
Shredding the evidence.
Cooking the books. Discovered secret wait lists.
It's not been as widespread as it has been made out to be.
307,000 of our fighting men and women died waiting to get into the VA system.
And the constant berating of the VA that comes from the Republicans.
It's unimaginable. How can this have happened?
No one is held accountable.
It's not been as widespread.
Imagine if Hillary Clinton had to wait for 90 days for an appointment. Veterans across the country are doing that every day, and yet she says they like their care.
Overall, veterans who do get treated are satisfied with their treatment.
Some waited to see a doctor and died in the process.
And this constant berating of the VA that comes from the Republicans in pursuit of this ideological agenda.
Let me ask you about the Iran nuclear deal. It was signed under Secretary Kerry. It was begun under you. You started those talks.
I did.
You have said you expect the Iranians to cheat. You think they'll buy time and perhaps stay along their course to building a nuclear weapon. If they cheat, Secretary Clinton, will you have any course of action other than a military course of action? Would you enter into negotiations with them again? Would you go back to economic sanctions knowing they cheated and are then closer to a nuclear weapon?
Matt, look, let me put this in context because this is one of the most important strategic questions we face. When I became Secretary of State, the Iranians were on a fast track to acquiring the material necessary to get a nuclear weapon. That had happened the prior 8 years. They mastered the nuclear fuel cycle. They built covert facilities. They stocked them with centrifuges, and they were moving forward. What was our decision? Our decision was to try to put together an international coalition that included Russia and China to exert the kind of pressure through sanctions that the United States alone could not do.
Right, but you said that you think you're going to cheat.
Look, this is an important issue. I know we're on TV. We don't have a lot of time.
I want to get to a lot of questions.
I will talk quickly. But I want people to understand this. So, yes, I put together the coalition. We imposed the sanctions. We got them to the negotiating table. And after I left, we got the agreement. That agreement put a lid on their nuclear weapons program and imposed intrusive inspections. I have said we are going to enforce it to the letter.
Do you think they're playing us?
On the nuclear issue, no. I think we have enough insight into what they're doing to be able to say we have to distrust but verify. What I am focused on is all the other malicious activities of the Iranians. Ballistic missiles, support for terrorists, being involved in Syria, Yemen, and other places, supporting Hezbollah, Hamas. But here's the difference, Matt. I would rather, as president, be dealing with Iran on all of those issues without having to worry as much about their racing for a nuclear weapon. So we have made the world safer. We just have to make sure it's enforced.
And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. And I want them to understand that, because it does mean that they have to look very carefully at their society. Because whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them.
I think that we should be looking to create an umbrella of deterrence that goes much further than just Israel. Of course, I would make it clear to the Iranians that an attack on Israel would incur massive retaliation from the United States, but I would do the same with other countries in the region.
The potential for a nuclear attack by Iran, if Iran does achieve what appears to be its continuing goal of obtaining nuclear weapons, and I think deterrence has not been effectively used in recent times. We used it very well during the Cold War when we had a bipolar world. And what I think the president should do, and what our policy should be, is to make it very clear to the Iranians that they would be risking massive retaliation were they to launch a nuclear attack on Israel.